Have you ever noticed how certain people seem to have an almost uncanny ability to influence their surroundings without uttering a single word? They don't raise their voices, they don't plead. Instead, they simply step back, and everything shifts. The atmosphere changes. People begin to reflect, to pursue, to feel the absence. Now imagine if you did the same. If you stopped reacting instantly to every situation, if you chose silence over reflex, distance over confrontation, what do you think would happen? That's exactly the point. When you're no longer constantly available, emotionally, physically, mentally, it disrupts the pattern. The people around you begin to feel unsettled because they've learned to navigate you through your reactions, your impulses, your consistency. But the moment you decide to step back, the dynamic shifts. Those who thought they understood you come to realize they don't know you at all. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Now reflect on this. When you become less accessible, who begins to panic? Who becomes annoyed? Who tries to provoke you just to draw out a reaction? That behavior says more about them than it does about you. It also shows just how much influence they still have over you, perhaps without you even realizing it. You continue giving yourself out of a desire to please, to keep peace, to avoid losing people who were never truly invested in you to begin with. And with every forced yes, every hasty reply, every emotional response, you lose a bit of your energy. By the end of the day, what remains? Exhaustion, frustration, a hollow feeling you can't quite name. Here's the reason. You're too available to those who don't even deserve a moment of your quiet. But this isn't about turning away from the world. It's about turning inward. It's about choosing yourself. It's about understanding what Jung described as individuation, the journey of becoming whole, true, and complete. And that journey begins when you realize that silence can be more powerful than endless debate, and that stepping back, when done with intention, is not weakness, but strength. So I ask you sincerely, how long will you let your emotions be controlled by others? How long will you respond like a puppet each time someone touches a nerve? Maybe now is the time to cut those strings, to pull away, to become an enigma. Because the moment you stop being, you're used to being available, all the time. From a young age, you were taught to always be ready to respond, to be helpful, agreeable, to say yes, even when no felt right. You were conditioned to believe your value depends on how accessible you are to others. But here's a truth that often goes unspoken. Being constantly available isn't a strength, it's a trap. As long as you believe you must always be emotionally or physically reachable, others will take advantage of that. You'll feel drained, used, and forgotten the moment you're no longer useful. Why? Because constant availability makes you predictable, and when something becomes predictable, it becomes easy to take for granted. People start using you as their go-to emotional support system, turning to you for attention, comfort, and validation, then discarding you when they're done. You may not see it clearly because you're caught in the belief that showing up for everyone means someone will eventually show up for you. But that's not how it works. Carl Jung described the persona, a social mask we wear to feel accepted and appreciated. It's often this very mask that drives us to be overly available. You say, "It's fine," even when you're overwhelmed. You reply instantly to messages when you're exhausted. You explain, justify, and defend your actions as if you owe people an answer for simply existing. But here's the reality. The more you center your life around other people's needs, the more distant you become from your own. Always being on call is a quiet form of self-neglect. It's a hidden way of chasing approval, fearing rejection, and trying to shape how others see you. And that need for control costs you dearly. It drains your peace and spreads your energy thin, as if it's unlimited, when in truth, it's not. People who expect you to be constantly available don't necessarily want you, they want what you offer. Reassurance, company, distraction, emotional ease. And when you change, when you draw a line or stop reacting, they become upset. They might call you strange or say you're acting different. But the issue isn't that you've changed, it's that you're no longer useful in the way they've come to expect. Here's the harshest truth: the more available you are, the less people value you. When something is too accessible, it loses its meaning. People don't respect what they don't have to work for. They don't cherish what's always within reach. So ask yourself, who truly deserves your time, your attention, your presence? Or maybe, more importantly, who deserves your absence? Before we can answer that, we need to explore something deeper. Why do we react so quickly? Why do we feel compelled to explain, to please, to always say yes? The answer lies in what Carl Jung called psychic energy, and that's what we'll explore in the next part. Because your energy is your most valuable resource, and if you don't learn to protect it, others will drain it for their own use. If this message resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your support. Carl Jung didn't believe the human mind was just a machine reacting to triggers without cost. He saw the psyche as an energy system, where every thought, feeling, and decision uses up that energy. The question is, are you directing where your energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every time you react on impulse, you drain your mental energy. Whether you're defending yourself from a criticism that wasn't worth your time, responding to a provocation just to prove a point, getting involved in meaningless arguments, or trying to gain approval from people who don't appreciate you, you're using up your inner strength on things that don't truly benefit you. Jung made it clear, what you resist persists. The more you react, the more you entangle yourself. People who constantly feel emotionally depleted aren't weak, they're simply misdirecting their energy. And do you know what happens when someone is constantly exhausted? They become vulnerable. Vulnerability makes it easier for manipulative, opportunistic, or emotionally dependent individuals to take advantage of you. They sense that you don't know how to protect your energy. They notice that you react to everything and always feel the need to fix what's broken around you, and they exploit that. Jung believed a healthy psyche is one that knows how to retain energy within. This means being able to say no without guilt, staying silent without feeling like a coward, and observing before acting. Real power lies not in reacting, but in choosing when and how to act. And this is only possible when you know yourself well enough to recognize your impulses. Think about it. How many times have you lost sleep over a conversation left unresolved? How often have you replayed a moment, wishing you'd said something different or tried to understand why someone treated you poorly? That's your energy being depleted with no return. You're keeping alive mental scripts that should have ended long ago, nurturing patterns that persist only because you keep engaging with them. Psychic energy works like a shield. When well preserved, it gives you presence. You walk into a room and earn respect without saying a word. But when it's poorly managed, you feel invisible, reactive, and fragile. And the world is not kind to those who crumble easily. That's why it's crucial to observe your triggers. What situations make you react without thinking? What causes you to lose your balance? These are the exact spots where your energy leaks. And that's where your work begins. Not to become emotionless, but to become discerning. To have sovereignty over yourself. One of Jung's most powerful insights is this: when you start conserving your energy, you disrupt the roles that others project onto you. And that makes people uncomfortable, because now you enter a deeper realm, the silent mechanics of manipulation. In the next section, we'll dive into how opportunistic individuals feed off your energy, and how becoming unavailable renders their tactics ineffective. You're about to see the faces of those who've been draining you, often without your awareness. You might think you're in control. You might believe your reactions are conscious choices, but the truth runs deeper. Most of your emotional responses are preconditioned, and people who understand this can manipulate you effortlessly. They don't need to shout or force you. They only need to push the right buttons, the ones you've left exposed, and you'll respond. Every time Jung called this projection, a psychological mechanism where people cast onto others what they refuse to see in themselves. But there's another layer to this. While others project onto you, you become the screen for these images. And the more emotionally accessible you are, the more you serve as a blank canvas for others' needs. You've likely experienced it. The friend who only calls in a crisis. The partner who expects you to always step in. The person who compliments you, but only when you're useful to them. This isn't coincidence. They're not engaging with you. They're engaging with the role you've agreed to play. And why? Do you agree? Because of fear. Fear of letting someone down, fear of being unloved, fear of abandonment. The most effective manipulation doesn't come from loud demands. It hides in silent guilt. It happens when you feel obligated to give, to understand, to be available, even when it's breaking you inside. Here's the crucial point. The manipulator doesn't need to control your actions. They only need you to keep reacting in predictable ways. But when you stop reacting, the whole game falls apart. When you start saying no, choosing silence, stepping back instead of explaining, you begin to dissolve the projections, the mask they placed on you begins to slip, and that unsettles people, because now they no longer know who you are. Worse, they are forced to confront themselves, and not everyone is ready for that. Your unavailability becomes a threat. It forces others to face their inner void. The silence you give off reveals the internal noise they try to ignore. And that's when the backlash begins, the criticism, the drama, not because you're wrong, but because you stopped playing their mirror. Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you step back, when you stop fueling the same emotional loops, the other person's shadow starts to surface. And that's unbearable to those who have always used you as a way to avoid themselves. But now, what about you? Are you prepared to face the discomfort of being misunderstood or rejected because you chose to protect your peace? Are you ready to sit through the silence that follows breaking old patterns? Because in that silence, a new form of strength begins to grow, and that's exactly what we'll explore next. You'll learn how silence, when intentional and conscious, can be one of the most powerful tools of the human psyche. It changes the way you relate to others and reshapes how the world engages with you. We live in a loud world. Everyone wants to speak, to react, to win arguments, even at the cost of their own peace. But there's a power few understand, and even fewer master the power of silence. Not silence born of fear or submission, but of awareness. Strategic, clear, deliberate silence. The kind that isn't absence, but deep, undeniable presence. Jung. So silence not as emptiness, but as a fertile space for internal growth. When you stop reacting, you start noticing. And once you begin to observe, you start to see patterns that were always there, emotional cycles, manipulative dynamics, repetitive traps. Self-sabotage often hides in silence, but silence also brings clarity. And clarity is threatening too. Those who seek to control you. Have you ever noticed how some people get anxious when you don't reply, don't explain yourself, or simply step away? It's not always because they miss you. It's because your silence disrupts the story they've been telling themselves and possibly others about you. When you're talking, they still feel like they have a grip on the situation. But when you go quiet, the rules shift. And that unsettles anyone who relies on your reactions to stay in control. True silence isn't just the absence of words. It's the ability to manage your own energy. It's choosing not to get pulled into someone else's emotional storm. It's knowing when a battle isn't worth the effort. Carl Jung once said that becoming your true self, a process he called individuation, requires some distance, because only in quiet can you actually hear yourself without all the outside noise. But let's be honest, silence comes at a cost. It will push away those who only valued you for what you did for them. It will confuse people who saw you through their own distorted lens. You might seem distant, cold, or even arrogant, but those reactions come from people who never truly wanted to understand you, only to use you. Here's a tough truth. As you grow, you naturally become more mindful of what you say, because you realize that your words are an investment of energy, and not everyone deserves access to that energy. Sometimes silence isn't withdrawal. It's power. It's the language of someone who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. Silence can be uncomfortable because it makes people face their own thoughts, their own internal chaos. And that discomfort often reveals more about them than any argument ever could. You don't need to explain your absence. It speaks for itself. And those who feel threatened by your quietness often reveal just how much they relied on your lack of boundaries to keep their own sense of control. Still, the most transformative silence isn't the one that unsettles others. It's the one that rebuilds you from within. It's the quiet space where external validation fades and you begin to reconnect with your inner self. This is the space we'll explore next, because cutting out noise isn't enough. You also need to learn how to direct your energy intentionally. Where to give it, where to keep it, and where to stop wasting it altogether. It's time to protect your inner world. If you're starting to reclaim your energy and set boundaries, you'll appreciate my book Beyond the Shadow. It explores Jung's key insights and offers practical tools to guard your energy, define your boundaries, and rediscover your true self. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. Understanding all of this is one thing, living it is another. If you keep saying yes when you mean no, replying to messages that bother you, entertaining meaningless conversations, or holding on to stagnant relationships, then all your insight becomes just another form of self-deception. Real change begins when you make a firm decision to be selective, and that takes emotional discipline. Being consciously unavailable isn't about being rude or closed off. It's about no longer making yourself endlessly accessible. It's about reclaiming your time, your energy, and your peace. And it starts with small steps, delaying a reply, taking a breath before reacting, leaving a conversation before it turns chaotic, turning off your phone without feeling bad, saying, "Not today," saying, "That's not for me," saying, "I'm stepping back." But here's the most important part. You don't have to justify your silence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your absence. And for many people, that's unforgivable. Because when you stop explaining, they lose the ability to control the emotional script where you're always the supportive, accommodating one. Jung knew that the path to becoming your true self involves solitude, but not the kind that leads to sadness. It's a sacred solitude, a retreat inward, where you can hear your own voice again, a place where you rebuild yourself, not through others' expectations, but from your own truth. Want a good way to measure your personal growth? Pay attention to who pulls away when you become more private. Notice who tries to provoke a reaction when you stay calm. Watch who tells you you've changed when you finally put yourself first. These are not signs you're doing something wrong. They're signs that you're freeing yourself. At first, becoming unavailable will feel uncomfortable. You might feel guilty. You might worry you're being too harsh. You'll hear others say you're being distant, but that's part of the transformation. You've spent your whole life putting others first. Of course, it's going to feel strange when you start to put yourself first. But this discomfort, in you and in others, is proof that you're evolving, and conscious unavailability is the foundation of that evolution. Self-determination. When you say no to the world, you're saying yes to yourself. Walking away from a toxic environment is a way of honoring your peace, valuing it above any superficial bond. And when you stop justifying your actions, you begin to earn genuine respect, even if only from a few. But not everyone is ready for this kind of presence. Your emotional distance can highlight wounds others aren't prepared to confront. It can expose how much they relied on your inner turmoil to maintain their own sense of control. That's when the break happens, and with it comes discomfort, pain, loneliness, and a sense of loss. But in truth, you're not losing, you're liberating yourself. So what happens next? What follows the separation? What emerges from the quiet? In the final part, we'll explore this. How renewal only comes to those brave enough to be misunderstood, to stand alone, and to become whole from within. The loneliness of the strong. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins to shift. First, there's silence, a heavy, uneasy quiet that feels like it's echoing inside you. You begin to question your choice. Was it too harsh? Are you pushing away those who care? But over time, that silence begins to purify. It calms you. It starts to heal. And then solitude arrives, but not as emptiness. This is the solitude of full presence, of being deeply connected to yourself. It's the solitude of the strong, the kind that arises when you no longer sacrifice your well-being to keep others close. In the space where confusion once lived, clarity begins to grow. Where anxiety lingered, peace takes root. Where neediness thrived, a new kind of strength appears, the strength that comes from being complete on your own. Carl Jung said that becoming who you truly are requires stepping away from the crowd. You must let go of your mask, walk your path alone for a time, and that's exactly what you're doing when you choose to be unavailable. You're not escaping life, you're returning to yourself. This is when you stop reacting and start creating. You move from being shaped by circumstances to shaping your life from within. Those who are unsettled by your absence show that they were never really drawn to you, but to the part you played. Now that you've outgrown that role, they don't know how to respond, and that's freeing. Yes, you'll lose some people, but you'll rediscover yourself. You'll leave behind certain places, but reconnect with your core. You'll be misunderstood, but also begin to earn true respect, because when you stop being available for everything, you become rare, and that makes you valuable, unforgettable. Make no mistake, this is a rebirth, a fresh start, the beginning of a life where you no longer settle for emotional scraps, manipulative games, or affection that feels hollow. Now, you only welcome what aligns with your peace, your truth, and your wholeness. If you've made it this far, it's because part of you is already ready for this shift. A part of you understands that love means little if you have to lose yourself to receive it, and that real self-love begins the moment you choose yourself, even if it means walking alone for a time. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even disliked in the name of your inner freedom? Are you ready to pay the price of being fully yourself? If this message resonated with you, write in the comments, I choose my peace. Let's see how many here are ready to take this step. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It matters more than you think. See you there.